So anyway, did you watch the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
I did see some the clips of it. I was very happy for everyone that got inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame this year for
Did
sure.
you? Do you normally watch it, or you just like it depends on
Yeah,
who?
ordinarily I still keep track of it, regardless of who gets in and who doesn't get in. I still I because I like the show, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
because like these things, like these award shows, they're all subjective and blah 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 blah. But I really like the actual like production of it, and I like the graciousness of the people who do actually get in.
yeah. For so if people don't know who got in this year, the class 2025. You have Bad Company, Chubby Checker, Joe Cocker, Cyndi Lauper, Outkast, Soundgarden, which I love, and the White Stripes. You have like the Salt and Pepper got in the Musical Influence Award, Warren Zevon. You also had like a couple other like categories, musical excellence award, and the Ahmet Artigan. What does that mean? Ahmet Artigan. What is that? Is that
So the
a
the
special?
Ahmet Erdogan. So Ahmet
Ertigan.
Erdogan.
Sorry. Yeah.
So Ahmet Erdogan was one of the co-founders and producers of the early Atlantic Records. Like he's the guy that helped cultivate the careers of Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, and that award is given to a non-performing person. Like it's
Mm,
usually to a person that's a songwriter or a producer, but not like a performing act. That's what that award was, to get somebody in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that isn't, a artist.
so the rule's still 25 years since your
Yeah,
since your start, right?
yeah.
All
It's
right.
25 years since your debut is
So
what it
Outcast
is.
debuted what 94, right?
Yeah, 1994
So
Southern Playlist.
they are well overdue then.
Oh
Six
yeah,
years later,
absolutely. So here's the funny thing about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. We probably talked about this before in our
I think we
last
had
time.
teased a little bit last time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very rare for any act to get in its first year of eligibility. It's very rare.
Why is that? Is the rules similar to is the rules like similar to baseball?
I mean, it could be. Well, today the rules are different. Back then, it was. I guess it was just at the whim of whoever the voters were. And Jan Wenner, the co-founder of Rolling Stone magazine, created the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and sat on the board until he put his big fat white supremacist foot in his mouth. But
Mm,
um, he was the one that was that was kind of creating the culture of how people were getting in. You know what I'm saying?
right.
So people weren't getting in the first year of eligibility all the time. I know, like I had a gripe. I remember a big thing happened with Paul McCartney. Right, Paul McCartney
Yeah.
gets in, I think in 1999, a year after his wife Linda McCartney had passed away,
Yeah.
and he should have gotten in well before that. He actually should have gotten in before John Lennon got in. John Lennon, but Jan Wenner has a hard on for John Lennon, so of course he was going to get in first.
Yeah.
And Paul McCartney, as far as I believe, he showed up drunk because he was
Who
very
Paul?
much Paul. Yeah, I think
Wow. I didn't know that story.
I think I mean, if he didn't show up drunk, he was certainly upset. But I think that he probably pre-gamed a little bit because he was very much in grieving mode.
Right. Him and Linda were
And
very close.
he had a very rambling, meandering speech, and all he talked about was Linda and how Linda loved New York City because that's where the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame used to be. It used to be at the Waldorf Astoria
Right.
Ballroom.
Wait.
And
That was in Cleveland, right?
well, yeah, the Hall of Fame itself is in Cleveland, but
So
the award show was usually in the Waldorf Astoria
right.
until
Remember
they
that.
started to like bump it around a few places, and he was just like totally like stammering over the speech. He was very sad about Linda. And then
Is it still in New
it's
York now, or is it somewhere
it
else?
was in Brooklyn this year. It's been in
Okay, so still
Brooklyn.
New York then. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's been at the Barclays Center, which is not far from where I am now.
Okay. Now continue the McCartney story. This is actually very fascinating shit.
So McCartney, he's just rambling on about, oh, I love being in New York. Linda, my baby, she loved New York and she grew
Mm.
up here, and he was very, very sad. And it just sounded like he was either grieving or he was drunk and grieving. And then Stella came up, and Stella McCartney
His
had
daughter, right? Yeah.
his daughter came up, and she had on a shirt and she was crying. She had on a white tank top that said "About fucking time." And he's like,
Wow.
and then he's like, hey man, like I'm in here as a solo artist. John's in here as a solo artist. What about George and Ringo? Come on,
Yeah.
guys, get your shit together. So it's
So
just, yeah. I mean, and of course, like Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson was eligible in 1997, which is the year that Jackson 5 did get
got
in,
in.
but he
Right.
didn't get in until 2001.
Right.
Mariah Carey, we talked about this the last time. Mariah Carey is eligible this year, and she still didn't get in, and she's got more number one
Wait.
records.
Was her debut in 1990 though?
1990. So that means this year would have been the
No,
well,
longer.
no,
No,
longer.
longer. She's 10
Yeah,
years
you're right.
overdue. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's still not in. She's got more number one records than anybody else but the Beatles, and she's still not in. So that's
what?
how subjective it is.
Let me ask you this. So what is the politics behind this though? Is it because of
Oh,
percentages?
you know what? I have my theories about this.
Okay, you tell me.
Okay, I have my theories.
I'm so glad we're doing this, by the way. I didn't even plan this.
Me too. So the thing about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is that it's sort of a double-edged sword, because you have the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So you have the people who think that people who are rock and rollers,
Right.
the idealistic white, rock and roll people should get in. And then you have people that understand that, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the term rock and roll is a generic catch-all for
Right.
American music in general.
Right.
That's why you have so many people who complain, like, why is Outkast getting in? Why how come,
LL
the
Cool
MC,
J,
and LL Cool J, the MC5s aren't in, and Iron Maiden's not in yet, and blah blah blah. It's the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I was like, dude, like, stop. You realize rock and roll is just a catch-all for all music.
Right.
And number one, and number two, that's probably intentional so they can stir up that controversy as well, because it's like, the rock and roll, we determine who gets in. It's just a snob fest is really what it is, which is why I'm glad that at least over the past 3 or 4 years they've allowed fans to be incorporated in the voting process, which wasn't the case before. So I want to say since for the past 4 or 5 years they've allowed fans to vote, and so that's been nice. But Mariah Carey should have been in already.
Like I know in certain sports, like you gotta hit a certain threshold. I know in baseball you gotta hit a 75% threshold to qualify for the Hall of Fame.
Yes,
in that cycle. Is there something similar in rock and roll?
Yeah, I think it is. You have to. I mean, they have, like, let's say they have like 20 finalists, and I think that you have to be like in the top 10 or 12 or whatever of that finalists, because they have a certain number that they pick, and then whoever has the highest of that number, that they the ones that get in. And so that to me is just always fascinating, because I think about, like, okay, yes, these people are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but, like, wait a minute, how come Mariah Carey's not in? How come Phil Collins isn't in? Phil Collins is in as a member of Genesis.
It's ridiculous.
But he's not in as a solo artist. And it's like, dude, like, who was, like, only Michael Jackson and Prince were bigger than Phil Collins in the 1980s.
Yeah.
And that doesn't even count all this the dope stuff that he did for Disney. I mean, he has an Oscar, for crying out loud. So it's just they pick who they want to pick, and it's just like, okay, it's like it's very, and it's also, it's like the MVPs in sports, it's very narrative based. So but at the same time, when people do get in, I'm happy that they get in. Like I said, with Outkast, I was very happy to see Outkast get in. They have one of, if not the most flawless discography in the history of
we debated that on one of the shows we were together, either one of the shows we did with the draft or whatever.
Yeah,
you agree with me, they have the best catalog in hip-hop history, probably.
I think it's between them and De La Soul.
You said there was the other one you were saying. You're right.
That
it was consistent.
Have the two best.
Yeah. It does bother me still to this day that NSYNC got the honor for Michael Jackson Hall of Fame. Like, NSYNC,
but listen,
I understand why they did it. It was a popularity thing.
It's ratings. Look, that's all it was. I mean, it's like Prince, right? Like, the Outkast were the ones that, and Alicia Keys were the ones that inducted Prince, and I'm like, no, like, how come you didn't get somebody else, like Lenny Kravitz, or someone that literally had a more direct lineage of Prince or like Andre Simone or a Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis or a Morris Day or somebody like that could have done it. You know, they're just doing it because they're people who were popular at the time. It was 2020, it was 2003.
But even you can sell me on Outkast and Alicia Keys doing it. In sync, I understand they were huge in 2001, but come on, it's Michael Jackson, dude. He's got to get someone on the level of Steve Wonder, someone on the level of Paul McCartney, someone on the level of that ilk.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But at the same time, and we both love Mike, but his induction speech was also very anticlimactic for me.
He didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be there.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, he was injured, so he didn't perform.
Yeah.
Even though he could have just sat on the stool and sang. And somebody actually yelled out because he's like, "There won't be any moonwalking tonight. I broke my foot at Neverland. The doctor says I'll be able to get out of this cast in about 4 weeks." And somebody yelled out, "Just sing!" And I was thinking, yeah, just sing, dude. Like, get on a stool and sing, man, in the mirror. But then his speech was very short. You know, he thanked his parents. He spent a majority, and he was particularly thankful for Berry Gordy, who he thanked very much in the Jackson 5 speech also. But it was a very anticlimactic sort of speech. Like Prince's speech was far more like grandiose and something you can really pull from. But I think that is what it is. It's like Michael was just kind of like, it's just another award, you know.
Like, honestly, he's one of the only artists that looks like this. Like people, artists like Cyndi Lauper, and we'll look at Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's amazing, but from Michael's like, okay,
and
Michael Jackson, like he's one of if not the only artist that can transcend that award show because he's that big.
Yeah, yeah, but and it doesn't make sense to have something like that, like a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, without having it in it. Which, like I said, once again, maybe he didn't want to be there because, like I said, Jan Wenner of Rolling Stone very famously, mistreated him throughout his life and in his death. I'm just saying Rolling Stone in general.
Right.
So it's just like Jan Wenner literally wrote him a letter saying why he would not be on the cover when Off the Wall came out. So yeah, so I don't blame him for doing that. When they did Rolling Stone interviews, he would do them like over the phone. When he did Ebony interviews and Jet interviews, they were always in person. So
yeah, and that's by design. Speaking of speeches, man, this Outkast speech, particularly from Andre 3000, was amazing. Here's a clip of his speech from this year's ceremony.
One thing that Jack said, man, Jack is, man, he's one of my favorites, man. We love you, man. But one thing that he said something about little rooms. And we started in a little,
That hit me, man. That really hit me.
Yeah.
Little rooms. Great things start in little rooms. Yeah, man. That's it.
Long live Uncle Mooney.
That was tough. I actually listen to that as well.
Yeah, that was
Andre's different, dude. The Outkast, they're pioneers. They really are pioneers.
Absolutely. I was fortunate enough to contribute to a complex article that came out that a couple of days before the ceremony that ranked all 6 of their albums from worst to best. And I thought about the fact that speech, and I was sitting and reflecting. When Outkast first broke onto the scene, they won the Source Award for Best New Artist on that infamous night when Suge Knight and Dr. Dre and Puffy, right? And all that stuff. Yeah, 1995 in Madison Square Garden. And they booed Outkast, not because they didn't like them, but because they didn't care. And it's like Tennessee Williams always says, the only thing that's worse being hated is being ignored.
Yeah.
And Andre stepped up to the mic and said, I thank God, but it's like this though. I'm tired of the closed-minded folks, walking around acting like we got a demo tape and they don't want to hear it. But all I gotta say is that the South got something to say.
Yeah.
He said Outkast, in essence, begins their ascend with the statement, the South got something to say, as a mission statement for what they're about to do. And then Great Things Happen in Little Rooms is the culmination of their coronation into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Correct.
The two bookends of those statements.
It's incredible.
Is incredible. The South got something to say. Great things happen in little rooms. That is basically two edicts of what Outkast meant, not just to hip hop, but to opening the floodgates for Atlanta and Southern hip hop to have the influence that they had on the entire world from that moment on.
And I got to tell you also, as someone who loved hip hop, especially back then, back in the 90s, when at that time it was pretty violent. Like we're in the midst of the East-West Tupac and versus Biggie thing, and it was very violent. Outkast was a nice palette to have, like outside of that. If you were sick of the violence and the rivalries, here you have Outkast is just making great music, bring something totally different to the table than what either Pac was doing, and Warren G and Dre, and obviously and all the Biggie, you name it, So they were there to have a nice palette, and then once the East-West thing fizzled in the late '90s, when Pac and Biggie passed away, Outkast was there to pick up the pieces, and they just ran with it, what they were doing, and they ended up becoming one of the, if not the biggest act in hip hop history.
What's great about Outkast is what's great about people like Michael Jackson, like Missy Elliott, like David Bowie, like Kanye West. They reinvented themselves.
Yeah.
Like none of their like ATLiens sounds nothing like Southern Playalistic Cadillac music. Aquemini does not sound like ATLiens. Stankonia does not sound like Aquemini. Speakerbox Love Below doesn't even sound like itself. It's two solo albums. And then Idlewild doesn't sound like none of that. Every single time they came to the table, they challenged themselves. They challenged the listeners. They had, like, when I think about Outkast, I think about greats, like the fact that like Rosa Parks had a harmonica solo in the bridge. Like, what hip hop record's gonna have a harmonica solo?
Right.
Or a song like Spodioti Dopalicious, where you're gonna have this dope brass band,
sick song, bro,
with singing and spoken word on it, and they made it work. It wasn't, it's not supposed to work on paper, and they made it work. A song like Bombs Over Baghdad, which still to me sounds like it was made in the future, even now.
Yeah.
So, shout out to Big Boy, shout out to Andre. Those guys are just excellent ambassadors for Southern hip hop and just hip hop in general. Well, just Black music, period, but hip hop in general, because because what the Dungeon family did, it was embody the aspect that there's still a cultural aspect of hip hop that is just beyond just the making music, but just the lifestyle. So, I always, and that's why I was so grateful to see, especially when they brought everyone from the Dungeon family on stage with them. It's very much reminiscent of when Parliament Funkadelic got into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I think it was in 1998 or something like that. And Prince inducted them.
Yeah.
And like you saw, Bootsy Collins and Bernie Worrell and Eddie Hazel's widow and Junie Morrison. It was just, a beautiful moment.
Any shot they reunite? They're not broken up. They're just on hiatus, right?
I think that we've seen the last of Outkast as a performing duo and as a recording duo, and that's fine with me. I feel like, yes, Idlewild might be kind of an anticlimactic end for some people. Just the album, not necessarily the movie soundtrack.
Definitely the most least heralded album of the bunch.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the contrasting styles that made Outkast so beautiful before that, I think that's what worked against them in Idlewild, because I think they just weren't. They were on completely different planes, just creatively on Idlewild, to the point where it just the styles clashed more than they complemented each other. Not to say that there's not great stuff on Idlewild, but you can tell that, you know, they were not working together as much as they were coexisting. And I feel like Andre is in such a completely different place now that I don't even know if I'd want to hear what they would do if they were to get back together, just because Andre is just like I said, he's just not inspired. And I can attest to that myself, just like with, you know, the stuff that I've done as a creative. It's just like, why put my foot forward if I can't be at my best? And I think that Bun B had a great quote about him during a podcast a few years ago, where he says, Andre, he says, like, I've never seen somebody write as easily as he does, and I think that it isn't challenging for him anymore because it's too easy for him to write rhymes.
Like, he's beyond your typical hip hop star. He is a musical genius. He's wired. He's wired very differently from most artists. I get it. I totally get it.
And on the other side of that coin, Big Boy is the total opposite, but he's still equally a genius. I mean, Big Boy is one of the most underrated song makers and songwriters in hip hop history. Like, he came up with so many of those hooks and choruses, like Elevators and all that stuff. The way you move, it's just he really, you know, was, you know, they act like people act like Outkast is Wham. You know, people act like Andre is George Michael and Big Boy is Andrew Ridgeley, and like, no, dude, don't you dare.
I agree with that. That part I definitely agree with.
Big Boy's got some of the best rhymes, like the stuff he did on the title track of Aquemini, the stuff that he did on Stankonia and AT Aliens, the art of storytelling, once again, Spodioid Dopalicious. Like, dude is just one of the most consistently great MCs we've ever seen.
Right. One of the most underrated parts of the night for me personally was Cyndi Lauper's speech. You know, she's one of the most unheralded females in the industry. You know, obviously has the really big song she did, "Girls Don't Have Fun," back in 1993. But a lot of people, unless you're a fan, don't really know much else outside of that. So, but I did love her speech, though. I'm glad she got acknowledged this year. Here's her piece of her speech from this event.
How to make a long story short, oops, too late for that, but I just want to say that I know that I stand on the shoulders of the women in the industry that came before me, and my shoulders are broad enough to have the women that come after me stand on mine. And the other thing that I thought was really important, which is why I really came here tonight, is to tell you that the little kid in me still believes that rock and roll can save the world. And we have done, and rock and roll is a big, wonderful quilt of a lot of different styles of music, thank goodness. And all of that music has influenced me and my work, and without it, I don't know what kind of music I'd be making. So I just want to say, now of all times, you know, let's come together again and do good in the world because it needs us.
I love the fact that she went ahead and mentioned that when rock and roll, and that she goes, the big quilt, wide, and not just rock and roll, just in case you're wondering. You know, again, she is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated vocalists of her gender. You know, you don't ever mention, you talk about greatest, you know, of all time, you know, singers. We're gonna go Aretha and Whitney, Mariah, and Streisand, and rightly so, for the record. I'm not saying it's wrong, but no one mentions Cyndi Lauper because, again, what I mentioned earlier, outside girls just want to have fun. unless you're a diehard, you don't know the music outside of that song. I mean, another song. Well,
she's got classics.
True Colors, right?
True Colors, She Bop, Time After Time.
I love Time After Time.
You know, she's and plus, you know, the way that she, you know, infiltrated, you know, theater space, Broadway. You know, it's. I think that Cyndi Lauper she made up for what some would say is a lack of like a laundry list of like big selling hits with her like underrated influence on singers. Like you don't get a Chaperone without Cyndi Lauper. You don't get like even like an Avril Lavigne or something like that. You wouldn't get without someone like Cyndi Lauper, you know, coming through, being, you know, going out of her way to just be herself and be different and be colorful, but still say things that are, you know, she was able to straddle that line between being wistful and and poignant, you know, and you know that's hard to do.
Yeah,
you know, it's hard to be whimsical and to be profound.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. And I think she doesn't have the credit in that era, in 1983, 84, you know, where pop culture was, Matt, you might agree with this too also. Pop culture might have been at its peak in the mid-'80s. At any point of
1984 specifically.
Right. And she stood out. She stood out. She stood out. Not only with her music, but also her involvement with the WWF back in the day. You know?
Oh yeah, Big Lou.
She was instrumental and part of the first WrestleMania ever.
Yes.
So she stood out, bro. She was involved in an angle with Lou Albano and even with Hogan for a little while. I mean, she stood out at a time where the most talented of singers, actors, you name it, all mattered. 84 especially, and she stood out.
Yeah,
that's why she matters.
The fact that she stood out among people. I mean, Michael Jackson and the Jacksons were on their victory tour. Prince had the biggest hit of his career with the Purple Rain soundtrack. You got you know, Huey Lewis,
Van Halen,
still in the midst of their sports campaign. Van Halen's 1984 albums got 3 huge hits. Madonna's Like a Virgin is having its incredible run.
Yeah. The start of MTV's real ascent. 84 was the first. I think 84.
84 was the first year of the VMAs. Also.
Yeah. Michael charged it up in 83 with Thriller and all that, and then 84 was when it lifted off. So again, she stood out. She mattered.
She did.
And that's why she deserves all the praise she gets. And I'm glad she's being acknowledged. I really am glad she's being acknowledged because she mattered in a big way. And I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah.
We mentioned